I don't know if you saw this, but in his Laurel Canyon book, the epilogue is actually about Rodney Alcala.
Oh, I have to read that immediately. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
gonna read that tonight.
yeah, there's some very weird stuff in the whole case, like,
I only got
uh,
the PDF file from Laurel Canyon, so I just wasn't starting at the beginning.
uh, yeah, and like, one of the like strangest things is the crime that Rodney Alcala was put on trial for. The main witness was pretty obviously like totally hypnotized to tell the version of events that police wanted to hear. Because when she initially came forward, she didn't give them anything that would implicate Rodney Alcala, so they brought in a hypnotist and they essentially implanted this story into her mind. And then when she was actually on trial giving her testimony, it was so bizarre. She would often make these awkward pauses. Uh, she would be speaking in such a weird manner that the judge almost considered terminating her testimony. Uh, and then later, like when his verdict was overturned and they had to do another trial, the woman didn't even remember testifying at the first trial, like pretty clearly because she was in a hypnotic state, and of course she wouldn't have remembered it. So their main witness was like, basically turned into a Manchurian candidate. That's what Alcala's defense lawyer actually called her, to give statements that would incriminate Alcala, even though there was no other evidence for it.
Yo,
Hey Patrick, you
yo,
there?
yo, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for calling me.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, like I said in the email, there's a bunch of different topics that I've been recently looking into, and if you're any one of them that you're interested in, I could talk about. So, is there anything in particular that you had in mind?
Let's start with the Gacy case. It's good.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I sort of told you this before in a YouTube comment, but like when I saw because I spent the last several months looking into the whole Johnny Gosh abduction. I've been following a podcast by someone named Sarah Dimeo, Dimeo, who has been working on this podcast called Faded Out. She's trying to solve the Johnny Gosh case, so I've been following that and trying to help her out. And I I happened to notice that Philip Paskey, who was the business partner of John Norman in that sex trafficking ring, who
Hmm.
also worked for John Wayne Gacy, like he looks a lot like one of the abductors of Johnny Gosh. And so I just tried to confirm all sorts of things, and in basically every possible way, Philip Paskey looks, Philip Paskey matches the Johnny Gosh abductor in every way. Like they're both child traffickers. They were both connected to the Franklin scandal. They both have long blonde hair. They're both known to disguise themselves as a woman, and they're both over 6 feet tall. Like they're both thin. They both have blue eyes. They both have acne. And pretty much every single physical trait matches up. So I just found that pretty interesting, and it seems like the same group of people involved with Gacy later went on to become part of the Franklin network too.
Yeah, I heard about those many comparisons, and they're all accurate. Yeah, so it's more likely that Philip Paskey was the man who abducted than allegedly Adam of Johnny Cash. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the same person, like the perpetrator who kidnapped Johnny Gosh is named Tony. Like that's the name that Paul Benassi gave. It might just be a pseudonym. We don't really know because he's never been identified. But the same person shows up in other child abductions elsewhere in the country. Like Johnny Gosh was kidnapped in 1982, and then 6 years later, there was a girl in California named Michaela Garrett who was also abducted by someone who fits the exact same description. And Paul Benassi actually identified the photograph, identified the composite sketch of the person who kidnapped Michaela as the same person who was Tony who abducted Johnny Gosh. So it makes sense that this same person would be part of a ring that was going across the country kidnapping other children. And the Delta Project, John Norman's whole Delta Project seems to have some connections to California. Like, you remember, like in the video that you made about Dean Corll and Elmer Wayne Henley,
Yeah.
like there was child pornography found found in Houston that Dean Corll's victims were appearing in, and then that led to some arrests that were taking place in Santa Clara.
Correct.
So, yeah, there's definitely a link there between what John Norman was up to and California. So that all makes me think that Philip Paskey was one of the abductors of Johnny Gosch, and I've just been corresponding with Larry Potash, the Chicago anchor who talked about all those stories, trying to get details from him and seeing if I can confirm it. So that's really an ongoing thing right now.
Oh, cool. Very good to hear.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: are you like the founding father of CAVDEF, or just a member who contributed stuff like it with it?
I'm not the founder. Like CAVDEF, the organization initially started out just focusing on election integrity during the 2016 elections because there were a lot of irregularities during the Democratic primaries. It looked like the votes were being manipulated in favor of Hillary Clinton
Correct.
to hurt Bernie Sanders, and so I was following the Bernie Sanders campaign during that time, and I got involved with CAVDEF, and eventually I became one of the only members who was actually still there working on it, and I got the whole wiki started because, I mean, it's one thing to like just know that elections are being tampered with, but if you want to do something about it and actually catch the people who are responsible, you have to dig deeper, do some kind of investigative work, and see who is actually in charge of these elections. Like, who are the people who own the voting machine companies? Who's responsible for programming them? And doing all that sort of investigation pretty much got me into all these other conspiracies that I had never really given much credence to before. Stuff like, the JFK assassination, Watergate, Iran-Contra, 9/11, and then finally, the darkest thing that I came across through that was these protected pedophile networks, like the Franklin scandal.
Yeah.
That you may not have heard this before, but like one of the things in the Franklin case that was instrumental in covering it up was the Omaha World Herald. Like the local newspaper in Omaha was pretty much just saying these children are liars, like they should be indicted for perjury, and they were just putting out all these super biased propaganda pieces. And the Omaha World Herald it was the owner of the largest voting machine company in the U.S. So you have this company that's covering up Franklin while at the same time in control of the majority of votes in the United States, which is something that was really worrying to me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I came from learning about pedophile rings to coming across Dave McGowan's work concerning programmed serial killers. So, I mean, CAVDEF definitely broadened its focus from just elections to the whole, corrupt backdrop.
The whole spectrum, yeah.
Yeah, because you really can't separate one sort of conspiracy from the other. If you start looking into one thing like rigged elections, you'll end up finding all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Correct. Yeah, I really love that website, CAVDEF. I mean, the serial killers Wikipedia entry is really just mind-blowing. I wish I could add that information in the first parts of my YouTube series.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, like, that's sort of my whole goal with that was to go through Dave McGowan's work, see if I could, find some of the sources that he used, like newspaper articles and such, and then also try to build on his work, because the way I see it is, Dave McGowan, he asked all the right questions. He highlighted all these things in the cases that just don't make sense. Because I know that, before I never questioned, like, the story of Ted Bundy, for example, but when you actually start to break it down, you start to wonder, how could any of this be the way that we were taught it happened? It just doesn't make sense. So what I think that should be done from that point on is, take Dave McGowan's work and start to really dig individually into these cases and try to find people who were involved and see if they're willing to talk. Try to actually go from questioning the official story to coming up with the real story and seeing what really did happen. Who are the actual killers who worked with Ted Bundy, for example?
Yeah, yeah.
That's been my goal. And if you want, I can talk a bit about the weird stuff that I found with, the whole Grand Junction case with Ken Botham and the corrupt sheriff there who was picked out by the witness instead of Ted Bundy.
Yeah, I would love to hear your new revelations about Ted Bundy. Please go.
Sure.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to ask, is there a part 3 to the Ted Bundy video? Because I was trying to find it on your channel, but it wasn't there. It's just there's a gap between 2 other videos.
Yeah, that's correct. A few of them are deleted by YouTube, but I have them online on Daily Motion, so I will send you the links after the interview.
Alright, oh, cool. Yeah, that'd be great. So, do you remember how in the chapter on Ted Bundy, McGowan said, the star witness confidently identified the person she had seen, the Pitkin County undersheriff?
Yeah, I think it was Carol Durant, she was heavily influenced by Peter Hayward.
Well, yeah, that was in Utah, but I'm talking about the later stuff that took place in Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
Because Ted Bundy was said to have murdered Karen Campbell
Mm-hmm.
at the
Wildwood Inn?
Yeah, at the Wildwood Inn in Aspen, and there was supposedly a witness who saw Ted Bundy and could pick him out, but then when they put her on the stand and they said, oh, is this person in the courtroom? And she's like, yeah. And then they asked her to point to him, and she didn't point to Ted Bundy. She actually pointed to the undersheriff of Pitkin County, the second in command of the sheriff's office.
Jesus, really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So,
how did you come with that? But because it doesn't say in McCown's book.
It said that in McGowan's book briefly, but it's definitely easy to miss. It was just a brief mention that he made. But when I actually looked into who the sheriff was, it turned out that there was a huge other scandal that he was involved in before he came to Pitkin County. So, yeah, because I know that Anne Rule actually wrote about this in her book. And by the way, before I get into that, do you find it a bit weird that Anne Rule, she lived in all the same places where Ted Bundy lived at the same time Ted Bundy was living there before they met each other?
Yeah, that's
now,
it. I think that's very suspicious, and because they had such a close relationship with each other, you can almost make the assumption that they knew each other before they said they knew each other.
Yeah, or alternatively, the thing that I was thinking is maybe she was sort of Ted Bundy's handler in a way.
That's also a good possibility, but I don't have really much evidence to that's that direction. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's a possibility.
But in any case, Anne Rule basically said, oh yeah, the witness picked out Under Sheriff Ben Myers, and she pretty much just brushes this off aside as though the witness was wrong. The witness didn't know what she was talking about. She made a mistake. But I find it to be a bit of a weird coincidence that she just happens to pick out the second in command of the sheriff's office as the person who was involved in the murder. That seems a bit too big of a coincidence to ignore. But anyway, when I actually looked up,
I also can recall that there was a young co-ed missing, and she was the police chief Midville's daughter.
Yeah, that happened too. Back when he was committing crimes in
Utah.
Yeah. One of the victims, Melissa Smith, was the daughter of the police chief there.
Yeah.
And once again, they just say they don't seem to think there's anything significant about this. But I have a feeling that this was actually a politically sanctioned hit against the police chief. And there are other examples of that too,
But what was the motive behind the Karen Campbell murder? Because I also thought her husband was a doctor, right?
I don't know what her husband did. He might have been a doctor. I do know that her brother was a police officer in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Okay.
So that might have been a motive. But yeah, I do want to look more into what the motive might have been behind Karen Campbell. But anyway.
I know. I also thought the disappearance of Debbie Kent and Carol Durant at the same time and 100 miles apart from each other. I thought that was a really weird circumstances.
Yeah, I don't think it's even possible that Bundy could have committed both of those crimes, and I remember reading in McGowan's book that originally the witnesses who were at the school identified a drug dealer as the suspect.
Yeah,
With
correct.
Bundy, and then they later sort of changed their identification to pick out Bundy instead, which could not have been possible.
Also, if you think about the arrest of Ted Bundy, it's also pretty suspicious that he wasn't arrested by one or two cops, but there were with a half of dozen of them.
Yeah, you're right, and there wasn't really any cause to stop and arrest him in the first place. They pretty much just pulled him over for no reason,
Yeah.
no legal justification. So I mean, I'd say there are pretty clear signs that Bundy was being set up throughout the whole case.
Mm-hmm.
But I am inclined to think that Bundy was involved in some way, but I don't think that he was actually doing the physical murders themselves.
Well, I
Bundy,
do think he committed a few murders of him by himself because he has a really recognizable story with a lot of credibility. But I do think the majority of the murders was performed by multiple
yeah,
people and also with alternative motives.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that, because in the you remember reading about File 1004, the thing that talked about satanic involvement in the
Correct.
Seattle murders.
Yeah.
Right, and there were witnesses there who said that they saw Ted leading satanic cult meetings and talking about devil worship and witchcraft and stuff like that.
Yep.
So the thing that I've felt about that is that maybe Ted Bundy was sort of a Manson-like cult leader, and he would have these other people go around with him committing these murders.
Yeah, I do think there are a few instances, a few cases, especially the abduction and disappearing of Linda Ann Healy. It really screams out there were multiple perpetrators, and she was. There were also, I think, there's always also telephone calls, harassment to the
Yeah.
victims, and I think that's also being ignored mainly by the mainstream media. But I think it's a very important thing that they're always stalking, they're always harassing on the phone in these cases with each other.
Hmm.
Always.
And right, and you remember that thing that I also brought up that one other suspect in the Seattle murders who was not Ted Bundy just happened to move to Utah at the same time that Ted Bundy did, and then they were actually a better suspect for the Carol Durant abduction. They actually fit the description better than Ted Bundy did.
No. Yep.
Yeah, so it seems as if Ted Bundy moved to this state at the same time that other potential members of his cult moved as well. And then there was also that person in
I also have a big hunch that the whole thing with the Mormon church in Utah was kind of indirectly or directly involved in these killings because I've read about really weird things about Utah and how they share women with each other and have a whole different mindset than most people.
right. Yeah, I mean, a while ago I remember watching this Dateline episode about the Mormon church, and there was this pastor there who was abusing, I think, hundreds of young girls who were part of the church. They were all his wives, and he was sexually abusing them and then even taping it on audio tape, and it was a super disturbing thing to hear about. So I definitely agree with you. I think that there was a lot of sick stuff going on in Utah, and Bundy was probably linked into it in some way. I think, wasn't he, didn't he convert to Mormonism at one time?
Yeah, it was because of his wife, Lynn Kendall. Her parents were Mormons, and he did it for her. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you
But,
think about the aspect that he was also photographing his crimes? Because I read in one book, I can't remember which book exactly, that he was photographing his crimes, and he was spooked out by police when they had a search warrant once, but they didn't find the photographs, so he burned them. But what do you
yeah.
think of that? That he was photographing these things, and if police have found those photographs, why didn't they show it at the trial or anything else?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, and that sort of thing, it happens with a lot of serial killers. I know that, there's sort of this pervading claim that, snuff films are a myth, but whether or not, like, it seems like there's always evidence that snuff films exist, but no one's been able to find them. But there's definitely evidence that many of these serial killers are taking, still photographs of their crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they serve pretty much the same purpose as snuff films. But like you say, if the police had these pictures, like, they would be a piece of incontrovertible evidence that Ted Bundy was involved. Like, it would pretty much just be a smoking gun as to, like, convicting him. And
Yep.
I don't see any possible reason why they wouldn't introduce him in court unless they somehow either cleared Ted Bundy or they showed other people who were involved. And I think that it's likely that...
Correct. I think it's the same case on a little bit of a side note with the case of Leonard Lake and Charles Ng. They never produced videotapes of Ng committing any murders because I think they don't have any.
Yeah, I mean, either they don't have them
or with other perpetrators, yeah.
They don't want to show them because it would pretty much just blow away the whole lone serial killer mythos.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, I mean, back about the Pitkin County Under Sheriff Ben Myers, because there's a whole big weird story regarding him. Basically, in Grand Junction, Colorado was pretty much widely known as a nice sort of idyllic town to live in. It was pretty peaceful. There wasn't a lot of violent crime going on. But then in 1975, that all changed, and there were a series of really mysterious murders that were rocking the whole town. Like, all of the murder victims were pretty much young women who were somehow involved in drugs or prostitution. Like, you had Denise Oliverson, who disappeared in, I think, April of 1975, and that murder was attributed to Ted Bundy. Like, Ted Bundy actually... do you remember how when he was on death row and they were about to execute him, he just gave all these sudden confessions to all these murders, but a lot of the details were incorrect?
Correct, yeah.
Right. And one of the murders that he confessed to was Denise Oliverson, and it seems to me like you remember, like, similarly in the case of Henry Lee Lucas, they were just taking him on tour, getting him to confess to all these murders that he had nothing to do with so that they could clear the books and close these cases.
Yep.
And I think the same thing happened with Bundy. They were just trying to get him to confess to all these murders that could have possibly been committed by him and just say, okay, Bundy committed them, we can close the case now. And Denise Oliverson was the first of the Grand Junction victims where that happened. After Denise Oliverson, a woman named Linda Benson and her 5-year-old daughter were murdered, and this supposedly was done by a different serial killer, Jerry Nemnick. Then, in August, Patricia Botham and her her across-the-street neighbor, Linda Miracle, and Linda Miracle's 2 sons were also killed. And her, Pat Botham's husband, Ken Botham, he was charged and convicted of these murders, and he's been in prison for 39 years. But if you actually, go through the evidence and you, look through all what happened at the trial, you see that the police have pretty clearly been, manipulating things and trying to get witnesses to lie and so that they could frame Ken Botham for his wife's murder. And then finally, Deborah Tomlinson was murdered in December of 1975, and, I mean, so you have all these mysterious murders, and they're all being attributed to, lone nut serial killers, or, oh, the husband did it. But what it really seems like all of these murders are part of a consistent pattern. Like, according to one website that I found about the Ken Botham case, all of these victims were involved in drugs. All of these victims were, sexually involved with the police officers, which was another weird thing. Linda Miracle's boyfriend was a cop in Grand Junction named Truman Haley, and other women similarly had, police officers that they were sexually involved with. And it turns out that the police chief himself would actually be partying with some of these victims. Now how does that sort of thing happen? Why would a the police chief be at parties with these women who are involved in drugs and prostitution. Like that sort
Yeah,
of
it's the same
that's just,
exact thing in Long Island killer, who is still
yeah,
unidentified. Yeah.
right. So it seems like this is a situation where these women are getting basically being abused by people in power, and then when they try to speak out about it, they just end up murdered, and then they just attribute them to serial killers or innocent scapegoats like Ken Botham. Uh, I
Wasn't
wanted like
the first lawyer that Bundy took murdered with a motorcycle accident?